On today's episode of Blue Collar Elk Hunting, the ElkBros are still out in the mountains, y'all, chasing elk, and we're getting some incredible content to share. But since we're not back, what we're going to do is we're going to share a collaborative show that I pre-recorded with David Brooks of the Don't Be Mediocre Podcast. David and I talk elk and elk hunting. We talk scouting for elk, comparing e-scouting versus boots on the ground, and I also talk about what I look for when scouting and finding my focus areas and how I'm not focused on finding bulls while scouting. From there, our conversation goes to hunting scenarios and some of the strategies I use and how some of those strategies came about. There's a lot of information in this one, y'all, so pull up a chair, adjust your volume just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Giglia. You want to hunt elk, and they live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Welcome to the Don't Be Mediocre Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Brooks. This episode, I get to speak with a legend in the elk hunting community, one of the founding members of the ElkBros and co-host of the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast, Mr. Joe Giglia. So guess what we're going to talk about, because it's less than 2 months away. Preseason elk scouting, different tactics Joe uses on the multiple bulls he's encountered. So we're going to talk elk hunting, because we all love it. So, let's meet Joe Giglia, ElkBro. Morning, Joe Giglia, right? Giglia or Giglia?
Yeah, it's Giglia, man. It's Giglia.
Giglia.
Yeah.
Oh, where's the A come from the O?
So it's, those Italians mess with you. So the first one's like a J sound and the second one is silent. So it looks like it would be Giglia, so.
Sì, yeah.
It's like
Mi parlo italiano un po'. Mi abito nella Vicenza d'Italia.
Yeah. Spaghetti, ravioli, rigatoni.
Yeah. I live in Vicenza, Italy. I speak Italian just a little bit. I took it in college, so.
You know what? That's what's so funny is my wife is Hispanic. I've lived in New Mexico since 1980. I speak way more Spanish than any Italian, man.
It's funny you mentioned that because my ex-wife was from Mexico City, but she's been in the States for like 30 years almost. Mm-hmm. But when her family would come, they're coming from Mexico and they don't speak English. So I'd always tell her, could you help me out here? Just kind of, because I can pick up words. I can pick up certain,
right,
because there's similarities between Italian and Spanish. So I can pick up the general gist of what they're speaking about. But man, when they get going, you're just kind of like, I hear, pero. So I know they're saying but about something, and that's it. Yeah. And and she would never do that. And my stepdaughter, she would always say, I'll do it for you.
Let me tell you something that I'm going to throw out there right away is that I really think people in your situation or in my situation, that when you're around people that speak another language that you don't grasp everything, you learn so much more about body language and about expressions and about how people stand, act, and stuff like that I actually think applies to other things we do, like even out in the elk woods, man, like the behaviors of animals. But I went through the same thing, and it's like, okay, you can tell if they're mad, angry, want you to eat, go to bed, get the heck out of here. It's just by that body language. Yeah.
I thank God though for Google Translator.
So that wasn't around during my,
Yeah, see, I had that. I was lucky because I would just bust it out and I would just say something or type it and then show it to her parents, and then they would do the same thing. It was kind of archaic, but I could, like I said, I could, and I hate people. I was in Vicenza, Italy for I was 173rd Airborne,
Uh-huh.
And they're in Vicenza. And there are so many guys there that refused. Fuck that, I'm not going to learn to speak Italian. Why, dude? You're in a new place. You may not be here again. Why not just go out and mingle and
Yeah.
enjoy? Don't be a dumb American. Why do you think Europeans hate us when you have attitudes like that?
You know, and I'm just like just the opposite, because my wife and I have taken a couple of cruises, and that's the thing you get to do when you retire. But you know, they have all these excursions and stuff, and what we would do is we basically go out, and if we did do an excursion, we get to know either the person that was running the excursion or some of the locals there, and we were like, mind if we tag along? And we'd head off into, you know, the rest of the area where the tourists don't really go, man, and really get a feel, and some incredible food, incredible people, and just exploring, man. I mean, I'd always like going off the path. It's just built in that way.
I'm the exact same way. And speaking of off the path, by the way, this is ElkBros Joe Giglia. So we're going to talk some preseason scouting. We talked about this a little bit earlier in e-scouting and boots on the ground. And that's partly why I'm happy to be in Montana, because I can actually go from looking at my computer and just hoping that when I get there, I'm going to find out, to now I can look at spots, and then boom, I'll take my dogs and I'll do a hiking elk scouting trip. It's, you know, kill two birds, one stone. So especially now, summertime, you know, and it's really hot. Like, I don't know, I'm sure it is in New Mexico, but everyone here is saying that it's abnormally hot for Montana summer. And we've had a few fires, smoke in the air. So how it's dry, you know, not a lot of rain. So what are you looking for as far as, so you go out mid-July scouting for elk? What's your game plan?
You know, it depends a lot, man, because, you know, when you're comparing Montana to New Mexico, I would usually think we're in a flip case scenario. So I'm thinking you guys would be moister, wetter than we are, that we're in that dry, because we have this seasonal thing of monsoons. Everybody waits for the monsoons to hit. And I was just up in Colorado, and the rain there that hit me, and I know they get monsoons as well, but it was so different. It was just like clouding up. Next thing you know, it's just like nice, easy rain. It wasn't like the pounding thunder and everything that I'm used to, because when we get the monsoons, they come in, and buddy, I mean, it's like heck hath no fury, man, for about 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then you're done. And then the sun comes out and everything warms up again. But you know, we get that moisture, and then we're dealing with the heat. Whereas I hear, you know, a lot of these other places are generally wetter than what we are and have more moisture. You guys have better rivers, you got more creeks running, you got, you know, all of that happening. It just seems like it's flipped this year, because Dave, this has been the wettest June in our area of New Mexico, here in northern New Mexico, has been the wettest June in 30 years that I ever remember. I mean, I have a lawn. And I haven't,
I don't. Mine's gone.
Yeah. And it's like, man, we took a trip to Boston. We were off the grid here for a while, and we went to Boston, and we were gone 10 days. The yard had been mowed, and I have 2 acres here in New Mexico, and I call it a yard, but it's more like the natural stuff that grows up, except for what's in front of my house. But everything was mowed down. We came back, dude, and it was a jungle in 10 days. Unbelievable. So the growth that we've had has been great. It's been fantastic. Where I keep hearing now, everybody north of us, Montana, Idaho, you know, Washington, man. I mean, you guys have been dealing with 100-degree days. You know, I saw Seattle, Washington at like 107, 110 the other day, and I'm like, holy crap, man, what happened here? You know, so to get to your question, that's something I've had to deal with a lot. So when it's hot and dry, you know, and I'm doing my scouting, and my scouting is different than most people. I mean, on Instagram, you can go there and you're going to see all kinds of, you know, everybody has cams out. They're seeing bulls that are coming into watering holes or wherever they have them out. And it's great. It's really cool. But I have never owned a game cam. I still don't own a game cam. And when I'm
Can
scouting, I'm looking for things a little bit different. The first thing, and I'm going to deal with scouting here at home, and I just got done with the Colorado trip, so then I'll get to scouting out of state. But here at home, when I go out, dude, I'm looking for where the feed is. I'm looking for where cow tracks are. I'm looking for cow elk. I could care less where the bulls are.
That's what sorry to interrupt. That's, you mentioned the cameras and everyone's got their picture of their bulls and stuff, but they're not going to be there come September. They're going to be
yes and no.
where the cow, yeah. But yeah, it just makes more sense. Find out where the ladies are, because that's where the boys will be.
Yeah, because it kind of depends in some places, because, I have a tendency to just talk northern New Mexico, but when you start to regionalize out in different places, you get to Arizona, water is water. So the bulls and the cows are going to need it, right? Yeah. And then you have some areas where they have such mild winters that the bulls don't necessarily travel that far away to get into holes, or they might not have the same type of deep canyons for them to dive into. And, like I've scouted here in an area near my house a couple hours away. And when I would go in, I'm finding the cow tracks and I'm finding the feed and I'm doing this. But man, I was bumping into bulls. And I was like, wow, man, they just really never left out for some reason. So, and that has to do with food source, has to do with water source, it has to do with pressure, a lot of different things, to cause them to do that. They're going to bachelor up. And on the ranch where I guide, and I'm really fortunate because I get to see so much elk behavior, because I'm hunting myself, at the beginning of September. Then I begin guiding after that, and I'm guiding into December. So I see all of the full circle of where these bulls move and how they move. And I've seen where their summer location is going to change, and they're going to travel 15, 20 miles sometimes, or vacate that area to go out and find cows. And then you come back in, November, later November, they're coming back down to a lot of those haunts that you found them in before. So they kind of do a little rotation. But for me, in that hot and dry, man, I'm looking for water. I'm looking for best feed at the time. And if you're going to find water, you're going to find best feed, But we have these rotations of crops too, what I call elk crops in New Mexico. So if we get pinon pine cones, if we get pinon growing, or if we get juniper berries growing, if we get an acorn crop growing, that is a huge focus area for any of those. And I think it was 2 years ago, we had like the trifecta. We had pinon nuts, we had acorns, and we had junipers. I mean, it was just like an incredible feed year for those elk. And if you focus in those areas, you were going to find them there. And a lot of times they wouldn't even leave out of some of those areas to bed. A lot of times they would just bed in the middle of that while everybody's chasing up on the ridges and looking for them in those other areas, as long as they could have enough cover to get thermal regulation, or if the days weren't that hot, they would just stick in some of those thick feed areas and just bed down, get up and feed, man, and had nothing to worry about.
I mean, that's the one nice thing is there's a lot of springs around here. So there's a good flow in the streams and the creeks, but the standstill water, lakes and stuff are really, they're still there, but they're low. But just the rainfall, what I'm used to. But I found some, like you said, I'm presuming at the elevation, probably cows, droppings and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the tallest peaks where I am around here are 8,000, maybe 9,000 feet. So yeah. I don't know if the bulls are nose or they're farther south or where there's higher peaks where it's, because I was up at Big Sky last weekend for the Total Archery Challenge, and so that was 8,000 or so, those peaks. And
I think in your area, and to talk about that is, remember, they're slaves to their belly, man. It's all about the feed, especially the cows, man. And if you have, and what happens when it's warm like that is you guys have that early snow melt. So usually what was happening was elk would kind of follow the snow line. Well, you have that early snow melt. So I think a lot of these elk are going to kind of hang in some of those summer areas a little bit longer because I think some of these other places are just so hot and dry out there that I think they're going to feed more in some of those places they might have vacated, previously. So, yeah, and the other thing is too, when you're talking about hot and dry, you do have a lot of rivers and you have a lot of creeks. Whereas like you take southern New Mexico and Arizona, where they're having to put out tanks and different things like that. Well, shoot, you can put a game cam on those tanks or on those dirt ponds, and man, you can get some great images of bulls coming in, cows coming in, and so guys are going, well, Joe, you say, look for the cows. Cows are coming in this pond, so this is going to be the place to hunt. The only problem with that is that water is so finite that it's the only sources, and they're so easy to identify and find, and hunters find them, mark them, share those places, waypoints, so that everybody knows where those water holes are, that we actually force those critters out of there. We're focusing, people are sitting on water holes, they're spreading scent around, they're staying there on them. Now, I'm not saying that you can't kill an elk that's going to come into that, but a lot of those, what happens now is they change their behavior and they're actually watering at night, and they're already out of those areas when most people are sitting them. I've taken 36 elk on state land in the last 38 years, Dave, and I have never killed one over water. And it's not that I haven't sat it. It's not that, it's a great evening hunt, and especially when you've been busting butt and it's right before that hump day or around that hump day, that third day of the hunt, when your body needs to recover and you don't want to just spend time in camp. Well, sit in water, if it's showing good sign and stuff like that, it's a great option. But I want people to realize that in some of those arid places, that those elk will change their behavior because of the people that are doing that. So the locations that you want to look then is you can kind of look at where water is, and you can kind of get an idea about 2 to 3 miles away from that and look for those places where those animals might bed. And that's going to be your best bet, because that's where you're going to find them most during the day, and then they're going to go and water at night. So that's kind of an arid type thing, right? But your situation where you have a lot of creeks and rivers, because they don't need that. They don't need those lakes that are going down. They just need those springs, those creeks, and those rivers, right? So for you, and again, I've never been to Montana, right? So, I've been to Wyoming, and I've seen it's just incredible rivers, incredible creeks. The water's everywhere. So for me there, it's more, especially if you guys are going to have a hot September, is, where is that quality feed? Where is it staying moist that they're going to have that quality feed? What kind of growths are happening there? Because elk are opportunists. There are going to be certain flowers and plants that are going to come up at certain times of the year that they're going to focus their feed on. And, I'm going to look at where are those places that they can still have great cover for their thermal regulation, especially now with it being hot, and yet be close enough to that food source. Water's not going to be an issue. I really think focusing on the food, especially in a dry year where they can get some quality grass, is going to be real, real key. That's where my focus would be anyway. And so I would start hitting areas, and I don't care if you're on a trail, a national forest trail. I don't care if it's a 2-track back in the woods. I don't care if it's an ATV trail. I would be on those puppies as much as possible, looking for track and sign of where those animals are at that point in time, and I'm looking for where the cows are. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Jason Phelps, I had him on last week, and or 2 weeks ago. No, last week.
Yeah, he said the same thing. Cows are where it's at, and it just as the more I get into this, I see guys. It's cool seeing, like you said, the trail camera pictures on Instagram of the bulls, but it just doesn't seem, for the most part, that they wouldn't be there. And why not focus your attention on finding where the girls are? I mean, it's like going to a bar. Do you want to be in a bar where there's a bunch of dudes? Not me. I'm a single guy. Ladies' night, it unfortunately brings out all the guys, and it's just like, I want to be where the girls are.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think it changes no matter what your species is for a male. It's all about the ladies.
No, absolutely. It's funny, and I try not to do it too much because I think I get in trouble with my wife when I start talking about it. But, there's a lot of similar behaviors between humans and elk, a lot of them. And, that's why I think people are able to humanize a lot of their actions, is a lot of times. But, you're exactly right. I have actually seen that bachelor groups, you find those bachelor groups that are all together. And I have seen those bachelor groups move from one area and get closer and closer to those cows. And I've actually seen, what happens a lot of times is because, everybody talks about, you have early season, right? You have pre-rut, you have rut, and you have post-rut. You always hear everybody talk about that. But you have what I call that rut staging phase. That's between that's that pre-rut to rut, where now those bachelor groups are transitioning. Those older guys are splitting off because it's not their first rodeo. They know that these young bucks, what's on their mind, and they're not that smart, and they split off. And then they let, in that rut transition phase, in that staging phase, they let those young guys go and start, feeling their oats and gathering up cows and doing all the work. It's kind of like being a rustler. That's what I think. Old bulls are rustlers, dude. They let the young cowboys do all the work. And then when it's time to get the payday, they go in, swoop in, take them, and hey, here we go.
Work harder, not smart, or work smarter, not harder.
Not hard. Absolutely, man. It ain't their first rodeo.
When do you typically, like, on average, is there a certain time when you think that pre-rut stage usually happens?
Yeah. So you're looking from I think from September, and it could be 1st or 2nd, to, I would say, about the 15th, 16th, right in there. I think that's when that staging is happening, and those younger guys are doing that. And then by, once you're starting to hit that equinox and those cows start to come in heat, I think you're going to have some that are going to sporadically come in heat, early on.
Right.
But then you're going to hit that time when more of those cows are coming in, and those bulls are just going to go down and take the herd. And then they're going to start tending the herd, and they're going to push those young guys out. But even in that rut staging period, there's a lot of those bachelors, of those younger bachelors, 2, 3 of them, especially from September 1st till like the 8th or so. You can really find a lot of those bachelors still together. And they still aren't sure about, and they don't have enough in them, or the testosterone level's not at the point where they're starting to gather the cows. Or you'll find one of those young raghorns that finds one cow with a calf and just follows them around everywhere, like, hey, I got me a herd, man. I'm the man.
Yeah, look at me. Sucks to be you.
And he does not want to lose that cow.
Where was my thought process here? So do you think it's like, I had Brian Barney, Brian Barney from Eastman's? He's a spot. He's out of Ennis, Montana. He was on here early spring. Anyways, he doesn't like to call. He's like, cause he's after herd bulls.
Right.
And as we all know, they're one of the probably most difficult creatures to call in. Let me see. I got 50 girls and one over there is trying to call me away. No, you come to me. So he's all about, spotting and stalking, because he realizes that's pretty much probably his chances are better of getting a herd bull than opposed to trying to call him in. Do you change it up? If you there's a herd bull, do you continue to try and call them, or do you do a team call, or do you do a spot and stalk? Have you done it all?
I've done all the above. You do what works in the moment. I mean, elk hunting is so dynamic, and you read the situation. I've actually been able to use decoys to some success with it. I've used spot and stalk with some success. I've been able to get in between a herd bull and his cows and had success doing that. I've been able to pull cows to me and had the bull follow them and had success doing that. I've had it where, the situation was really, really perfect, where the cows are doing their thing and this guy's trashing a tree, and I mean, that is prime time, run up and shoot that booger, man, because he's occupied. And I mean, there's every time you get in a situation, there's something a little bit different. And I've also had success getting right in the bubble on the cows, man, and pulling that guy, having that fight or flight, and the hard part about that is if you get the flight, well, you're screwed and you're chasing them for another half mile. But if you get that fight, man, you get immediate award. So I would like to get in close to his cows on the opposite side of where he is, if possible. Not so much so that you don't want the bull between you and the cows, because now it's easy for him. He's got his cows. He knows where it's easy for him to push them in the other direction. But if you're on the opposite, if you can get it to happen because of the wind that's going on, and you can either be on the side up above or on the opposite side of that bull, and then you throw out a lip ball in there like, hey, ladies, I'm working you, and start throwing some glunks and things like you're working one of those hot cows, dude, and you are in tight like that, that son of a gun has to either put up or shut up. So I think a lot of it's about when you are calling, it's really huge about proximity, about how tight you in, where you're located at, and understanding how that bull has to react with that. And you're better off sticking with bull sounds when you come in close to those cows like that, because the cows, if you throw out a cow sound and the cows are like, who in the heck is that? You're liable to blow up because the cows are going to blow up on you. I had, and I've talked about this before, Dave, where I had a prime situation, man. It was perfect. I had a large herd bull. His cows were bedded. I belly crawled up, and I was within probably 40 yards of the cows. Cows are to my right, bull to my left. And it was the prime situation where, had I been intelligent, but no, Joe Giglia has to call everything in, man. It's like, I'm in position. I'm going to throw out a cow call, and that son of a gun's going to go, oh, there's a cow over there, and come over to me, and I'm going to kill him, right? I get up that tight. I throw out a cow call. Everything jumps up, and everything runs away. I mean, it was like, because it wasn't part of the natural environment of their situation. You have a cow call coming out of a bush that you don't see a cow. There's a cow that all of a sudden appeared that never announced coming in. You never heard that cow working in. And so and it's a voice that we've never heard out of there. So it just blew up the whole situation, when had I been like your buddy you were talking about and just waited there, all it was going to do is take some patience, and that bull was eventually going to get up and come over just to check the ladies and do a little scent check around them and stuff like that. It would have been the perfect situation. It was the perfect situation, and I was the perfect idiot at the time. So, you learn from it, man. Everything's a learning.
I was gonna say, yeah, exactly. It's trial and error. Okay, well, I learned this time that's not gonna work next time. So, so it's a matter of, you said proximity. So, how would you call calling cows in? I've never tried. I mean, because I typically use cow calls, depending. I'll throw in bugles. Again, it's a situational dependent what I'm getting, response from. How do you know when to call in the cows, like turkey hunting?
I'm sorry, man. I've got my phone going off here. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
And I'm going to silence this thing so I don't have to worry about it. The ringer.
Because like with turkey hunting, sometimes you can use, I've drawn in hens because I'll have a tom with a flock of hens and I'll start keying, doing that lost young bird call. And I've called hens in, and then I've guessed who's going to follow. Is that same situation where you start doing like a lost calf or something to draw those cows?
I apologize for the interruption there, but no, there's things that you're going to use that are weaknesses to elk. They're social animals, they're herd animals. So you're either going to go to their breeding instinct, you're going to go to their herd instinct, or you're going to go to their maternal, paternal instincts, right? Paternal, you don't get a whole lot out of that because those guys are, they're there and then they're gone, right? I've heard people say that when you do a calf call that the bull's coming in because that's a younger cow and a breeding opportunity. I totally don't believe that. I think they're coming in because when they hear a calf that's bleeding or doing a lost calf call, that they see that as an opportunity that's a cow magnet. There's going to be a cow coming into that calf, and it might be a cow that's not part of the current harem. That's why that calf is running around like that. But the advantage about using a calf call is that it's just like if you were to have a kid lost in Walmart crying, you know how many women would go to that, man, and try to help that little kid? And it's the same thing. I mean, all of them take care of those calves, the aunt, the grandma, the cousin, the next door neighbor. When they hear there's an issue, they're going to go to it. So I think you can actually pull cows off with that maternal instinct and, using that calf call. I think that works very, very well. Now, there's another thing that I use though too. And I've done it two different ways, is that, remember, the cows choose the bull they're going to breed with. If you sound like a bigger, more mature bull than the bull that they're currently with, you can start pulling those cows off. I've actually done that. And so now that bull has to make a choice as well because his cows are starting to come to you. And I've done it where I've made it sound like a herd bull with my own group of cows that I'm tending and I'm moving with. Or you can just do it just sounding like just a big, nasty bull that you're trying to demonstrate your dominance to those cow elk and pull them over to you. And then he's got to either answer the call or not. Grinders tuning in, thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast. Our goal is to share our knowledge and help you flatten that learning curve so that you too can have some of the very same incredible experiences that have given all of us here at ElkBros a lifetime of memories. If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our Base Camp Elk Hunting Training Camp, the first in a series of online courses from our Blue Collar Elk Academy. Our Base Camp Training Camp allows me to use my coaching style and share almost 40 years of elk hunting experiences successfully hunting elk on public lands, as well as over 20 years guiding hunters of all ages and experience levels. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets. Our camp will prepare you specifically from that final moment most in your control, those final minutes or seconds the elk is in front of you, backwards through each step and level, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. Because y'all, you've already been there. You know what it looks like. By tapping my 30 years of teaching and coaching experience, our camps are developed considering multiple learning modes with text, visuals, audio, as well as video. And Base Camp will benefit those new to elk hunting all the way to the 10 to 15 year vet. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding.
So that's that's a proximity thing. So
Yep.
does that, you mentioned glunks, and so do you, I guess, turn up the aggressiveness as far as like not just bugle, but now you're throwing in the glunks and maybe some growls and some moans and some huffing, and because it just seemed, I've never seen that experience, but it just seems like when they're close in proximity, you'd hear those more like and growls, because it's like, man, what the I want to go right now. Now I maybe throw in a challenge bugle, but it seems the glunking and the growls and the lip balls, those really sound like kind of like
I don't want to throw in a challenge bugle. I mean, that doesn't fit the scenario that you're doing there. You're basically a frustrated bull that wants to breed, man, and you're not engaging with anybody else around you. You could care less about another bull coming in unless he comes in and starts getting into your proximity, and you got to warn him off. So to go ahead and mix a challenge bugle in when you're doing those pants and you're doing the whines and huffs and the glunking, it's out of the storyline basically. So when you are doing those, and I think a person can get away, glunks are so effective, and so many people don't use glunking. And whenever any bull hears a bull glunking, they know that bull's tending a cow. So that is an immediate attraction right there. So if I'm in proximity and I have a herd bull on the other side of these cows, and all of a sudden he starts hearing this glunking, and even though you think it's a quiet noise, these guys have radars for ears, man. Yeah. And you might not think he's hearing it. You start glunking on that other side, and it's not hard to glunk. You just have to.
You just take.
You just take your tube. Yeah, and you just.
Yeah, I've done it. Yeah.
And I mean, it's like raking a tree. Even raking a tree right there, that's you displaying for those cows. If he was to hear that raking going on the other side of his herd, he has no idea other than you're not displaying to him, you're displaying to his cows, right? So, the simple things, I hear guys go all the time, I don't know how to call. Well, can you go, oh, 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 oh. I mean, you can do that with your voice, man. And you can grab a tube and you can glunk with it real easy, get a stick. And I mean, raking is, especially now, I think especially in that rut staging period, I think it's even more effective. But, a bull hears that displaying on the other side. You're not challenging him. You're not screaming at him. You're not the flies that have been buzzing him and following him all this time, and that's the thing that, like when you talked about, cow calling or, giving a bull call out there around on this herd bull, and the difficulty is you're just part of the white noise that he's been dealing with all this time. Again, you're right. Why is he going to leave cows to go to a cow? Unless he has those cows bedded, knows where they're at, and thinks that there's another hot cow in the area. Now, herd bulls, when they're on the move, and herd bulls, when they're bedded, are two different animals, because now they have everything where they know where it's at. Herd bulls, when they're on the move, those cows are taking them somewhere. They're going to a destination, and there's no way you're going to turn that guy off. Now, you might have him in a park first thing in the morning. But again, that's even a worse scenario, because he's in a park and you're sounding off, and until he has a visual, he's not going to deal with you at all. So there's kind of different things going on there I just wanted to throw out.
So calling scenarios, do you ever hunt wallows? Do you look for wallows specifically or no?
Do I look for what?
Wallows?
Oh,
Wallows?
wallows.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's funny. It just seems like every time you find a wallow, it's like a nugget. And again, it depends on what's happening with the variables. If I find a wallow that's near where I've got a bull bedded, heck yeah, I'm paying attention because that's a golden nugget right there. That is the perfect place for me to set up a scenario. Um, if I have wallows in a transition area from a bedding area to a feed area that I know these animals are working, yes, then that's also a good time. It's a good midday tactic there because you're able to put on a scenario and bring an animal, bring a bull into you with that. But uh, I I actually like wallows better than I do water sources because it seems like wallows are generally a little more hidden. And it says that these guys are overheated. If you're seeing a whole bunch of them, they're having trouble with bugs, they're having trouble with thermal temp, and they're going to be hitting those to cool off and to get rid of those bugs, you know, uh, and they're going to get water from them at the same time. So I think wallows are nuggets that I always like to mark so that if I hear a bull moving from one area to another, that is a great place for me to stage up to bring that bull into me. Now, another thing I wanted to that just crossed my mind too, Dave, is that I really believe that destination bulls are different in the morning than they are in the evening. I think destination bulls in the morning are getting out of Dodge and getting to that bedding area. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
destination bulls in the evening are a lot more relaxed and meandering. I mean, that's why guys hate the moonlight, right? Because they're not going to come out of the trees into the meadows until 10 minutes, 15 minutes before dark, or they're going to come out after dark. But meanwhile, they have been moving the whole time from their bedding, going to where they want their nighttime bed to be and taking their time about it. They're not in that rush mode.
I could see that. Yeah. I think anytime there was a bull every bull in the morning that I've hunted, they are straight heading up. They're probably already up there. And every time they're bugle, it's just a little farther away, a little farther away and then it's just complete silence. So you figure they're in that bedding area or something. But yeah, it seems like they have a destination. I had a bull in Utah, came out to the meadow and then bugled, got his cows. Next thing you know, they're going down. Then they went down, around, back up, across this one meadow, back down, and then they're going way up. I mean, just every bugle is in a different spot. And the next thing you know, they're way up, hell up here within minutes, it seemed like. And then silence.
Something else that happens with that is you're not able to see it all. But a lot of times, because that bull most of the time is trailing his cows and he's fending off, he's got stragglers around. And so he's fending off those. And he might have another satellite or a bull that is kind of keeping his attention. And as he stops to meet that challenge or to respond back to that, his cows are still moving, So then what ends up happening is he turns and takes a jog to get back to the cow.
Right,
So then every time you hear him, he's way far off. And I think that's where a lot of people make a mistake is that when they have morning elk going to a destination, they trail them. And I think that's a huge mistake for a number of reasons. Number one, like I said, sometimes that bull will kind of linger back and then take off, or there's going to be stragglers. There's always like those spikes, or there's going to be those satellites or those raghorns that end up as you're trying to shadow or follow them. And I don't even think it's shadowing. I think it's more following you as you're trying to do that. You end up getting pinned by a satellite bull, or you get pinned by a spike, and that herd is just moving and moving and moving and moving. And now to keep up with them, it's impossible, man. I think that's a big mistake. I think what most people need to do is trying to get on the parallel side of those animals and work up trying to listen to where hearing as many cow noises and those bull noises as they are and staying just slightly ahead of that bull and moving parallel with them as much as possible. And you have way better chance of staying with the herd till they get settled in. And the other thing is I don't know if you've noticed, but when you're with elk, everything at the bottom is so much bigger when they're going up. And as they start going up, all these ridge lines and stuff start to get a little tighter and closer. So as you're paralleling those animals, a lot of times you end up being on that same level for a call-in opportunity, or even I've been doing it and all of a sudden the cows are crossing in front of me and I'm getting a shot opportunity or a call opportunity on a bull because the cows go, he might have lingered back, I move up, I've got a perfect split situation there. So, I think paralleling is the thing. Do not get caught up in that tail end vacuum, man, of trying to follow those guys.
That, and I think when you hear that bull, you just get such tunnel vision.
Yep.
And you think that's the only animal there, not realize, like you said, there could be those stragglers behind and all the cows up front, but you just hear him and you just boom. And the next thing you know, you spook because you weren't paying attention to the big picture going on
That
around you.
happens to all of us, man. I mean, even when you see that bull and you start working in on them, you get that tunnel vision. That's when it's really dangerous because now you got the little, dinkity dink dinks guys walking around, and next thing you know, you're busted. And I have been able, I've used a technique on that, but it's risky, especially if it's a herd bull. If it's not a herd bull, it's a very doable technique. And that is when I've had a bull bust me, where they've got me pegged and that other one's there and I know they're getting ready to go, I just start screaming, man, challenge bugles and get all aggressive. And then the bull will see that other one running off and think that he just got his butt kicked. Now, if that's a herd bull, you're out of luck because now he's going to start pushing his cows. But if it's just another bull that you're working and he sees that, you might have the opportunity to keep him there and to continue working the situation. So I've utilized that in the past and I've had it work for me. I actually got surrounded by 4 raghorns with another bull that was coming into me. And they busted out because they were circling. And once they caught scent, I just started screaming challenge bugles and stuff like that to make it seem like that's why they were running out.
Then speaking of scent, obviously when you're paralleling or following these animals, you want to make sure you're on the right side of where the wind is going because it's probably going uphill. So
yeah, that's why it's actually better to parallel than to trail, because at some point when you're trailing, those thermals are going to change and start going right up to those critters. Where if you're paralleling and the thermals change, your scent's going to go up ahead of you and not over to the animals. So I always tell people you want to be on the parallel on the downwind side so that you don't have to worry about, number one, your wind taking it to them or the thermals either way.
Do you think it's since say majority of, like you said, most of the cows probably ahead of him meandering up the hill and he's kind of hanging back and then they'll run up a little bit. Do you think that's a good opportunity too, to try and get in close and use some cow calls? Sound like you're a hot cow ready to go. And, cause what's this cow behind me? She's off to the side. Why isn't she with the rest of them?
It can in the right opportunity. Like I said, I've actually done that. And it was a situation, thick cover. So it was really hard for that bull to keep track of all of his cows. So when a bull's not able to keep track of his cows, what's he going to do? He's going to advertise, man, as he's going the whole time, right? So that his cows knows where he's at and can keep them in proximity. Well, I had the perfect situation where a bull did just that. There was another bull in tow that was screaming and he would stop and the cows would get a little further away. I'm on the parallel side. I'm in where I can see them and I lost the bull. I lost him and the cows kept going. So I immediately went forward to split that and gave a cow call and shot him at 10 yards. He ends up coming in, to catch up and end up shooting him at 10 yards. The cool thing about that story, though, Dave, was that situation wasn't what taught me something. It was what happened afterwards, because I have been hunting for the last 39 years with my lifelong hunting buddy, Leroy Chavez. We're married to sisters. He's my brother-in-law, basically. And he's more my brother, though, than any brother-in-law. And Chav, when we got into this group of elk, because it was so thick and because there were so many bulls talking, I ended up paralleling a little further ahead. He ended up going a different direction to get on another bull. So I end up with the perfect situation, kill this bull. The bull drops right in front of me. And I'm like, okay, I need Chav to help me work this animal and pack it out. So I have a signature bugle. It's a double bugle that I do. So it sounds something like this. So I'll do that. And it almost sounds like one bull cutting off another. Well, I just did it as a signature so that whenever I was calling and me and Chav were split up, because doggone that booger would end up going to other areas thinking a bull was me, or he would end up coming to me thinking I was a bull. So I started using that double bugle every now and then so that he could identify it was me. And so it became kind of like a signature call that he recognized. Well, after I get this bull down, I start screaming that double bugle, telling Chav basically, dude, come here, man. So I am screaming double bugles obnoxiously. I mean, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And then I start working the bull a little bit. And then I start double bugling over and over and over and go back to work the bull. Dave, by the time Chav got to me, I called in 4 other bulls.
I thought you were going to say you called a bull in for him that was like hung up for him.
Had he been there with me,
you would have got one.
He would have killed a bull, because just that bull cutting off that other bull, sounding like these bulls really engaged in this, brought in 4 other bulls before he got to me. So that was something that really registered and became part of my thinking set and part of my strategy and understanding of how to put on a show to bring elk in, how to disengage from your target animal. Everybody always engages with the target animal. They hear they give their location bugle and they get a response. And the first thing they do, man, is, wah! I mean, they engage that animal. And I discovered that there's ways of calling elk by being disengaged with them. And they actually will come in more confident. They'll come in straighter. In other words, they don't do all that scent check stuff, because it's not that same old rodeo. They haven't, people also forget, like you talked about how you get that tunnel vision. Well, we get tunnel thoughts too. We think that every time we call in a bull, that we're the only person that's ever called him in, right?
Yeah.
And
that's what I was just thinking. Because like, for example, it's not exactly similar, but in upstate New York is, like right before gun season starts and you're bow hunting, all of a sudden the woods just boom, people start sighting their weapons and stuff. There's got to be some way those animals can associate those, all of a sudden the time of year, and all of a sudden they start hearing a bunch of booms, and then next day there's tons of human scent in the woods. It's got to be similar to that. Like you said, most guys, they're going to hear that bugle, they're going to throw out a channel or a location bugle. They're going to get a response back, and then they'll probably go, get a little more aggressive. And yeah, this, like you said, they'll get the tunnel. Okay, now my next step is to throw an aggressive bugle at him after finding him, location bugle, and then get a little closer, and then throw a challenge bugle once he bugles back. And
and it's the same MO though too. I mean, we don't know how many times those bulls have been conditioned, because they've actually come in a couple of times and they spotted a hunter, or, and so they're like, whoa, and they start connecting that, and that's where they start getting more cautious and they start doing the circling, to get downwind and stuff like that. So yeah, we always think that when we're calling a bull that, we're the first person that it's like when you're walking around in the mountains and you're like, man, I bet I'm standing where no human being has ever stood before, and then you look over to your right and there's a beer can.
Yeah, I know. I think the same thing. Yeah, like the thing I thought was thinking about was like who was here like hundreds of years, thousands of years ago? Who walked this?
Yeah.
I always think about that.
Yeah, and we get minded like that with the elk sometimes. We don't realize that if we're doing the same thing that other people are, these guys are conditioned to that, and they're going to be cautious about that. So you have to find different ways to do it, and be just a little bit different out there.
Yeah, and the animals are too. There's a bull when I hunted here in Montana. I called him Chuckles because that's all he did. And he called, like, no matter what you threw at him, just chuckle. I can't do it in my mouth, but just a chuckle. That's all he did was chuckle back. And yeah, every single time. So I called him Chuckles because I knew who it was. And he was, he wouldn't come in, but he obviously had cows and it was morning, like you said, and he's heading uphill. He's got his destination, but every single response from him was a chuckle. But then I've had
What state was that?
That was in Montana. That was my first, that was my first time hunting here. And this bull, that's all he did was chuckle.
Are there in that area you were hunting? Were there wolves or grizz in there?
There are. You know what there actually are, because the biologist that I got in touch with, that like when I started researching Montana, we actually did a podcast together on wolves because that's mainly her thing. And she said, like, where I was hunting there, and I found the droppings and I reported it to her. Yeah, she says there's a pack out there. And then so yeah, I don't know if that had something to do with it, but yeah, that area actually has a pack of wolves.
Yeah, I think those elk learn, not to bugle if they're going to bring in, a bear or a wolf to them, man. I think a chuckle is, it's more low guttural, but it's a way of communicating that can go a certain distance, but it doesn't sail all the way like that and bring wolves in from a mile away. So, I mean, that could just be a conditioned response that bull learned.
Well, the funny thing is that like, so my first evening there, I was in my camp and there was a bull. He started up top and was he was letting everyone know he was there. He was coming down the hill, bugle, across the road. And then I know he was in range somewhere because it wasn't that far from me, but it was kind of dark, dusk. Bugle the whole way. And I'm like, where the hell did you come from? I didn't hear him at all until right in the evening. And he was like coming down that hill fast, bugling across the road and headed off. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try and remain quiet as much. Montana sucks for hunting. Let me tell you, it's a horrible state. The bulls don't bugle at all. And no, I'm trying to like steer people away from the state. But yeah, I was rather very happy with, that's why I moved here. Cause I was, it's part of the reason is the hunting.
Oh man, so we started out this thing talking about scouting, and I was telling you about what I do as far as New Mexico goes, but I've had to do for the first time something I've never done, and that's go scout out of state, to really go check out, what's going on in another place. And and it's funny, we always tell people that when you do e-scouting, that there's still nothing like boots on the ground if possible. And look, and I don't mean boots on the ground to go find elk. I think the importance of it is the perspective,
Yes.
Put a size relationship to what you've been looking at to the reality.
I'm gonna interrupt you right there because I had this conversation with a kid from Bozeman at TAC on Saturday, and I was telling him about e-scouting. I said, you go and there's 3D maps and Google Earth, and you can do the 3D and everything, and you look and it's like you get there, it's like this looks nothing like what I fucking saw on. It's like traumatic. I mean, you're just like you're playing out I'd be playing out routes, and I'm gonna go this way and that way, and else I'm looking like there's no fucking way. I'm not doing it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it looks good on maps, and you're right. You get there, and the whole perspective, you know, that even though it's 3D, it just doesn't do it justice. When you get
Well,
there,
and
you're like,
on the map, I mean, you look at it there and it's like, oh, that's just like right there to there. That's close,
yeah, and it's like, no, it's not, because you got to go over this way, and it's maybe some almost independent patrol way. You got to find a way around. You know, the blowdowns, all these factors you don't take in. You just think it's a straight path, point A to point B. Nope, it's point A, and then you got to go over to A1,
Yes.
then back to A, and then around. It's like, no.
Yeah.
But it's,
So
the perspective is
I
definitely.
think that's huge, man. I think a scout, and when we talk about scouting trips, most people relate that as, well, I'm going to go find elk, right? And I don't scout like that. What I'm doing when I go and scout is I want to get the lay of the land. I want to get a perspective of the land there. I want to find out, again, you always hear me talk about food sources. I want to find water sources. And if there are trails and everything, I am traveling them as much as possible looking for elk sign. And I'll start with track, and then I will reverse engineer from there. So, and I'm marking all this stuff on my GPS. So you'll start to find out that, oh, I had tracks here, 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 and you start to see a relationship with how they're moving, and you start developing corridors and things like that. But for me, it's more of, and finding holes. I'm looking at what most people would see and what most people would not see from where they're standing. Because you can drive into an area and have a focus and a goal on where you're going. And because of the lay of the land, there's other areas around you that you have no clue exist. And even if you looked on your e-scouting, you've got to be really, really good to recognize areas that other people aren't going to see because of the proximity and how it's placed. And that's the kind of things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the holes. I'm looking for places that end up being hid away. I'm looking for places that, there's so many people that are going to hunt on forest trails, right? They're going to get into the areas. But a lot of times what they don't realize is some of the best hunting is just off to the right, off to the left in areas off of those forest trails. And those are the kind of holes that I want to look for when I'm up there. But I can tell you this, man, just the other day, I'm in Colorado and I'm at 12,200 feet in elevation, and looking around, and the terrain was absolutely like nothing I had ever seen in my life. Because I was above timberline, but I expected it to be like what I've seen above timberline in New Mexico, where it's kind of real short grass or it's rocky or something like that. It was nothing like that,
Yeah,
man.
that's bare.
It was, I've never been to Alaska, but this is what I saw is how I envisioned the Alaskan tundra. I mean, there was brush that made it very stalkable with a lot of but I mean, brush that was a good 4 foot, 4.5 foot tall. And in some places it was just that brush up there. And in some places there were a lot of interspersed pine growing up in it that made it look like, like an Alaskan tundra to me. It was just incredible. And so this now changes my perspective on, well, can you stalk something above timberline in that area? Well, heck yeah, you can if they're up there on it, right? And I got to see, okay, all the snow's gone. That says something right now, right? Um, what am I seeing as far as sign? How is that looking? Are they using above timberline to go through the saddles from one side to the other? Well, they might later on. So I want to know where those saddles are. Not finding a lot of sign at 12,000. So let's drop down to 10,000 and see what we're going to find. And that's how I do my scouting, is basically, where is the use happening? Where are the possibilities for other use once pressure starts happening? Where are the holes? How is the water flowing? Is this hike that I thought going into this area as feasible as I thought it was? Or is it going to kick my butt, man? And the other thing when you're scouting, like for me, I'm not just scouting for myself. We're going in hunting as a group. Our group is various ages, sizes, ability levels. So when I'm scouting, I'm looking for areas that all ability levels are going to have a chance to hunt elk. We're going to have guys that can dive off into that canyon, but we're going to have guys that are going to have to stay more up in this area where the burn is because that's more to their ability level. So my scouting is not only just going, okay, there's elk there, but can people get to those elk? Can the guys I have in my group get to those elk? Because it's not about just me, it's about us being successful as a group. So that comes into play when I'm scouting there.
You mentioned something earlier about a lot of people hunt the. I found that the majority, I saw a lot in Utah, a lot of ATVs cruising the road and stuff. I found that people tend to be like electricity, the path of least resistance.
Yep.
You know,
Just like the elk.
Yeah, they'll call. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're going to take the easiest route to anywhere to get to point A to point B as well. But when it comes to humans, just some guys will start thinking, oh, I got to drag pack it out, and that mental game too that comes into factor. So when you scout, so as opposed to like scouting for your clients and stuff, they're going to guide. How for you personally in your group, how much time do you put in preseason scouting?
Well, I went on a 3-day, just day before yesterday. I was on a 3-day scouting trip.
Spend the whole time out there? Do you camp out there too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And in that time, I was able to cover 3 different areas of my plan in that amount of time, and actually develop, because I ended up crossing one area off. And that's what's so cool about boots on the ground is I really thought the area that I crossed off was going to be the hot area that we were going to spend our most time in. So it was like a kick in the gut when I got there, and I was like, holy crap, man, no, this ain't going to happen. Right. So now I'm like, well, we can't just have plan A, we got to work on that. So that meant we had to go a little bit deeper and go a little different. So I went and started exploring another area that would give us another option. And it was so funny that, Cole Wilkes, one of our ElkBros coaches, he was on his way to Utah. He's there, in fact, right now, probably in the calling competition. But Cole met up with me up there, and we were divide and conquering areas. So he goes up to another area that I had circled as a possibility, and I went down south, man, a whole hour and a half to another area to check it out. And it ended up that was golden for me, and it ended up the other one was golden for Cole. So right now we have 3 viable areas, with each of those areas having multiple plans within that area. So and that means that we're able to go an hour and a half from plan A to be in plan B, and we're able to go an hour to be from plan B to plan C in total areas, and within those areas we have plans. So that's all it took for that. That was 3 days, but honestly, I think I'd like one more run to one area, just to check roads, basically. That's all I want to do, because I want to check the access for the guys getting in, pulling a trailer or something like that. Now, let me tell you about one of those areas, Dave, and you were talking about the path of least resistance. One of these first areas has so much recreation going on. I mean, there's ATV, UTV trails. The roads in Colorado, I think some of those back mountain roads or these forest roads are in better shape than the road to my house. I mean, they're just really, really good, man. And, so Cole was like, dude, man, I've never hunted an area with so much access. And basically that's Colorado. Unless you go in a wilderness area, there's so much access to a lot of these places.
Yeah.
That's why I talk to people about the difference between high use areas and low use areas. I think in high use areas, elk get conditioned to all those razors and stuff running around out there. And they learn to live within that, just like you can live in Estes Park, man. You have all these elk living in your backyard because they've learned to live with that. They cross through town through the red lights, because they've learned to live within that. So it doesn't necessarily shy me away from an area, because if it's conditioned like that, I know that there's still elk in there, because the areas that I've hunted for the last so many years in New Mexico get a lot of conditioning as well with people, and we're still able to get the job done. So I think that's just an important thing to bring up, is that just because you are in the mountains doesn't mean you're someplace that elk haven't seen people, and quite often.
Yeah, it's taking that human factor out and stuff that, you think like, I mean, white-tailed deer do it all the time. White-tailed deer live in freaking urban areas. You wouldn't suspect they're there, and then there's freaking huge bucks right in some people's backyards. They just learn, like you said, they adapt to the situation. That's why they survive. They know how to survive. That's what it comes down to, surviving.
Yep, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
They're very intelligent critters, man. They that's like human scent. So do you think that those elk in that area with all those ATV trails are not smelling human scent?
Right.
Well, of course they are. So why haven't they blown out and run away and gone to the next state? Well, they have to live there. They need food, water, and no matter where they go anymore, they're going to come across in those areas human scent. So they learn to adapt.
Yeah, they know that ATV sound is coming this way.
Absolutely.
And it's going to go, and all of a sudden it's gone. They just, they associate that sound with just and they don't know what it is. Just like when you see animals, some animals don't even react to a gunshot because they hear that gunshot, and it's like they're almost startled by the sound because they've never, so it's, I think it's got a loss to his.
But as soon as they start seeing vehicles stop and having gunshots happening,
they associate that.
Then the next time they see a vehicle stop, they might stand there and watch you as long as you're moving, but you stop, they're out of Dodge, right? Yeah. We just condition them, man.
Sweet.
Smart critters.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Joe, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh,
so, food, water, cover as usual, but like for my situation, I got streams and water, so I'm looking for that greener area around the waters because it's pretty dry here right now. So all of us here in these dry western states focus on, of course, water, but then food's going to be, the greener stuff will be near the water areas.
And thermal regulation, man. Those guys got to have,
that too, yeah.
Yep.
So pay attention to those north-facing slopes where they can cool down these hot days, and fingers crossed. I'm going to try and get out this weekend.
Even some of those areas that get deep, that have a river in them, they might even, it affects their ears a little bit, but that helps to cool that area up on there. So they're not going to be where they can't hear, but it kind of helps to cool that area. So find those places. If you can go someplace to get out of the heat, so can they.
Yep. That's the plan. I'm going to try and get out Saturday. I got a call. I was looking on the maps last night, spot I'm going to check out. So awesome, Joe. Thank you for coming. Hey, and so your podcast is ElkBros, Blue Collar
Elk Hunting is the podcast. Yep. We've got different styles that we do on that, but just look for Blue Collar Elk Hunting. You can find everything ElkBros just by going, it's one word, ElkBros with an S, ElkBros.com. We have everything ElkBros there. We've started our Hunting Buddy site, which is a free service for guys that are looking for other people to exploring, trying to find people to hunt with, where you can go and put profiles on there. And that way you can help match up profiles.
That's on your website. That's on your website, right?
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the ElkBros Hunting Buddy. You can click on that. We have our Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy, and our base camp online training camp is that is what I have done from all of my years of experience and using my coaching tool set to be able to teach people how to hunt elk. And it's a dream of mine. It's something that I'm very proud of. It's something that's constantly going to be growing and getting better. If we can ever find time from all this other stuff. But you want to find anything ElkBros, go to ElkBros.com, man.
Sweet. And then ElkBros on all social media platforms. Again, Joe, thank you for Joe Giglia from ElkBros. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate you coming on. And it was great meeting you too. Finally, we would communicate on Facebook or Instagram, and it's neat to
I've
put
always
these,
just known you as bugle me this, man. So,
right. And like last week, I got to meet Ben Denamati from Shed Crazy and Jeff Moran, Relentless Hunter, and it's all of a sudden, whoa, Ben, that dude's a big man. Ben Denamati, Shed. I'm like, hey, holy shit, man. Because that too, talk about perspective. Then when you meet these people in person, it's like, wow, you're a large man. So, yeah. Sweet. And I hope to meet you someday too. I'm sure we will cross paths soon.
You betcha, David. Thanks,
awesome.
Man.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. You have a good day. The Elk Bro himself. Come on and talking preseason scouting, elk hunting, everything elk. Thank you, Joe, for coming on. Thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe my podcast. On Instagram, you can find me at Don't Be Mediocre _podcast, as well as my YouTube channel, Don't Be Mediocre Podcast. You guys have a good day. See y'all.